Emil Michael. I have the distinct honor of serving as the department's Chief Technology Officer and the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering. My responsibility is to determine where the U.S. military invests in technology so that our warfighters always have an unfair advantage, whether that battlefield's on land, sea, air, space, or cyber. Our warfighters must know that they're equipped with the best technology, and the mission of my office is to ensure that that happens. That means we set the technology priorities for the department, we direct investments across emerging capabilities and areas, we partner with industry, startups, venture capital, academia, and the goal is to deliver tangible results to the warfighter. And the idea is not to do that in years, but to do that now. The United States military has always, as you know, had a decisive advantage when we combine American ingenuity with American industry, American capital, with the warrior ethos. And so I want to give you a little history of what R&E, research and engineering, was before I started and where I think it is today and where I'd like to take it. When I started in the organization last May, I inherited an organization that had enormous talent, great scientists, program managers, engineers. DARPA is a crown jewel of the department and the country, frankly. And people were dedicated, I have a lot of dedicated people who've devoted their lives to the department and to the warfighter. I also inherited a growing list of priorities. In the two previous administrations, we added critical technologies to a list of critical technology areas that we reported to Congress on and said, these are the things we must focus on. That list was first 10, and then it became 14. And therein lies the problem. If everything's a priority, then nothing's actually prioritized. We have things like integrated network systems of systems, things that people didn't understand. People couldn't walk around every day and tie what they were doing to those priority areas. So like in any good organization, whether it be a company or the government, you want to get those areas of focus into a tangible set that people can almost recite from memory so they know how their day-to-day work ties into those priorities. So I did a rigorous analysis, and we studied each of the 14 and looked at the threat environment, and we were able to take those 14 down to 6, not for the sake of taking them down to 6, but so that we can actually point where the department wasn't working hard enough on those problems. And that's where we will direct our resources, our talent, and our time over the next few years. The CTAs are a guide. They're not the end-all, be-all, but we also need to start moving at a velocity that's more consistent with industry. So on top of these critical technology areas, we added sprints. And the idea of a sprint against any of these technology areas is to make sure we have measurable progress. So we can look back in a year, 2 years, 3 years, say, did we hit the milestones we thought we would? And if we didn't, why not? And if we did, maybe we move this critical technology list area off the list because we think we've achieved what we want to achieve and pick up the next most critical technology area. So trying to move at a different pace with a different mindset, with different accountability standards. So why this matters is we're at our 250th anniversary as a country, and we've accomplished incredible tasks. If you think about the Manhattan Project, the internet, which came out of DARPA, GPS, stealth aircraft, we're on the verge of autonomous vehicles, being able to do almost any kind of movement. We projected power through all these different eras of technological dominance, and you saw that in Midnight Hammer, in Southern Spear, and currently in Epic Fury. And they showed that where our technology edge was, and it's always something interesting and new. And we are learning from other conflicts in the world, like Russia and Ukraine, what the robot-on-robot wars look like, what a frontline battle in the future might look like. Something like 70% of the casualties have come from drones in that conflict. And we also have the potential for, we're in the midst of a great power conflict as well. So thinking ahead not only from what we're seeing on the battlefield today, but what we might see tomorrow. And we know that our near-peer adversaries, they're investing heavily in AI, hypersonics, autonomy, quantum, and their industrial capacity. And they're moving more quickly because of red tape and because of the cost of labor and because of latent industrial capacity. So our job at the department is to remove the bureaucracy as much as we can. And because when we do that, if you add the most powerful innovation ecosystem in the world, the most powerful capital markets in the world, then we will maintain and exceed our adversaries in technological dominance. One of the areas, the critical technology areas I'd like to spend some time on today is the applied AI technology area. We've all become familiar in our consumer lives over the last few years of what a ChatGPT could do. We're starting to become more aware of what AI could do from code writing, what it could do from pattern recognition, what it could do from creating creative projects that create content. For the department, what we're looking at AI for is how to deploy it across three different manners of work: warfighting, intelligence synthesis, and enterprise operations. So for enterprise, you could all imagine AI can improve the efficiency of any organization, and we're trying to use that as such. We have a lot of paperwork flowing through the Pentagon, PowerPoints, Excels, spreadsheets, planning documents, reports to Congress, you name it. The idea would be to enable humans, not to reduce the number of humans, but to enable them to do more with less, to take the tedium out of the work that they do so they can focus their brains on the higher order capabilities that we need them for. On intelligence, we gather an enormous amount of intelligence, but we're limited by human synthesis. So how do we use AI to synthesize that intelligence so that a human can look at the most important things first and start prioritizing what they're looking at to consume more so that we have more decision superiority at the edge. And then finally for warfighting, as you know, has a lot of logistics, planning, wargaming. There's targeting. There's all kinds of things which are been done by humans for generations that now we could have an assist from an AI capability that makes the warfighter be able to focus on the most critical tasks in their AOR or in their conflict. And one of the examples that we've been able to show in the last few months, we launched GenAI.mil, which is where we have Google's Gemini, and we're launching the other AI products for the enterprise capability I talked about. And out of the 3 million people in the Department of War, we've had about 1.2 million people use it in the last 8 weeks. Prior to that, no more than 80,000 people had ever touched an AI tool from a department system. So you're talking about a 10, 15x difference by just making the tool more readily available and usable. So you know there's a hunger out there, a thirst out there. When there's 2 or 3 billion people in the world who've touched it in the consumer world, we had barely touched it at all in the defense world. You know there's something that needs to be done. And we're only scratching the surface. We will deploy these AI tools deeper into our classified networks, deeper into our warfighting tools, and you will see a complete transformation, I believe, in the next 5 years of how we think about planning at the Defense Department at the enterprise level, how we synthesize it at the intelligence level, and how we use these tools at a warfighting level. The last thing we did there in the last 6 months, besides the CTAs, besides this AI prioritization, is we've aligned the defense innovation ecosystem. So now under R&E, we have the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office. We retained DARPA. We also aligned the Defense Innovation Unit, the Strategic Capabilities Office, the Test Resource Management Center, and the Office of Strategic Capital. And the idea is to have an end-to-end financing and research and engineering group that could look across those areas for new ideas, new companies, new technologies, match them with funding sources at the right time, at the right place, to avoid the valley of death, which I hate the word, but hopefully we won't be using it in a few more years. And we don't have to have a fragmented ecosystem where vendors have to go knock on 10 different doors, not really know which one's going to answer, not really know which one is going to give them a fast yes or a fast no, so that they can go back to the drawing board if they don't have what we need, or they can be brought in more quickly if they do have what we need. So we're continuing to supercharge that innovation system with not only the Office of Strategic Capital on the money side, but we have SIBR, DIU has money, and AppFit. So funding vehicles, organizations, research, science, AI, all put together in one organization so we could truly lead. You could think about these as a rainforest of opportunity. And one example that we've had most recently in the CENTCOM theater in Iran is the Lucas drone you may have seen that was developed in R&E. It was how do you make a cheap one-way attack drone that's under $100,000, because we've seen it happen all over the world. It started with an app-fit bit of funding, and it was recently deployed successfully in the CENTCOM theater after only a few years. We're continuing to refine that and make that something that we can mass produce at scale, domesticate the manufacturing of it, and that's sort of the future of what we're trying to do. I think I'd close with saying that the future really is about not only the addition of mass attritable systems produced at scale with autonomy and AI enablement, along with our exquisite systems. The mix shift is changing from all exquisite to a mix of both. Any conflict, as we're seeing now, and our legacy in the future, will require some of each. And the idea is to get better, as Mike Kadnazi spoke about, producing more faster at the exquisite, but then producing many more faster, cheaper, and attritable at the other end of the spectrum. So that requires this bureaucratic reform, and we hope to have new entrants come that don't have to come with an army of lawyers, use years of paperwork, file a lawsuit, auditors, lobbyists. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to come in. And that really becomes what the arsenal of freedom is. It's a system that has innovators, entrepreneurs, engineers, investors, all working in concert with the Department of War. So with that, I'll thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you, sir. I'll ask a couple questions, then we'll open it up to the audience. But I wanted to play a little bit on your experience working in Silicon Valley and getting some of these new entrants to scale up. What's the secret sauce for that within the department? Is it just money, or is it money and a hard problem? You know, we've had Anduril, Palantir, Shield AI, all of those entrants be very, very successful. How do you accelerate and expand that?
So the thing that the new entrants have, which is exciting, is a little bit of a clean sheet of paper mentality. So they can look at a problem, a common operational problem, and come with their own solution. And right now is potentially the best time we've ever had for venture capital crowding around this industry, partially because of SpaceX, Anduril, Palantir has shown that they could succeed in the department. Each one of them, by the way, had to sue the department for their first big contract. So the idea is no more lawsuits to get your first big contract. Investors then are crowding their capital around these entrepreneurs, and we're giving them more pathways into the department. What I think we'll see over the next few years as these companies start to build and deploy systems at scale is them learning how hard the manufacturing process is. It's not easy. It is something, and you see them now hiring up for that talent. And as we know, those things always have to be almost perfect for the Department of War. So what we're going to do is work with them closely to ensure that we're bringing through the test and evaluation process much more quickly, more shots on goal, more engagement from the department, more talent that they accumulate on the manufacturing and scaling side. And then I think you'll see 5 new primes in addition to the existing primes, 5 mid-sized primes becoming major primes over the next few years. And then you have a much more robust competitive base, which benefits the warfighter or benefits the taxpayer.
Thank you. One more, and I applaud you for getting down to 6 critical technology areas. 14 was way too many. I personally went even a little bit slimmer. But there are some notable exceptions that the department needs in technology areas. Things like microelectronics, and especially as you get into some of the exotic substrates, the silicon carbide type technologies. Space is not there. So how do you think about continuing the technology maturation of some of these, I would call them enduring enablers?
Yeah, so The critical technology areas were never meant to be an exhaustive list of the things that we thought are important to the department. They're the things that we think are important to the department that didn't have a home, didn't have a strategy. So space was a critical technology area, is extraordinarily critical to our arsenal. But with the Space Force being established and Space Command and robust funding for Congress, it has a life of its own now. It's being cared for in the right way. Same thing with Future G, which is the future of wireless communication. It has a well-funded office. It has a strategy. It's got the right amount of attention. So it didn't need to be on the list. What is on the list is we weren't making as much progress on AI. We weren't scaling hypersonics. That means scaling hypersonics into be affordable and more massive in our arsenal. We weren't scaling directed energy to be cheaper, which is a great counter-UAS tool. And we weren't scaling quantum sensing and battlefield information dominance. How do you dominate the information space with all the jamming and spoofing and things that happen in the world right now? So those are the areas that I want to put focus on, shine a light on, while the others move off into more program of record style operations.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
There's several right here. One there, one right over.
Sound check. Okay. Hello, sir. Thank you for being here. My name is Joshua Harris Samoas. I'm with General Atomics. And first, may I say, I enjoyed listening to you on the All In podcast recently. My question is simply, how do you hope to make the removing of or mitigating of the bureaucratic tape, or the red tape, as it were, how do you hope to keep that change permanent from, in the years to come, from administration to administration? Thank you.
Well, the first thing is to do it early in the term. Yep. So then you have as much time as you can to have it bake into the system. So with requirements reform, we've disestablished the JROC and created what's called MIA, the Mission Engineering way of getting at requirements. And instead of writing a 300-page list of requirements for a system, we're going to do a 2-page operational problem or challenge we're trying to solve, put that out to industry, and try to get more creative solutions. So how do you make that stick? You show that it works. You get more solutions faster. You're able to procure things more quickly. You're able to start the development process sooner because you're not going through a year or two of RFPs. So that's one example. The other thing is, with AI, getting it into the warfighting, getting it into the system so people start using it and then they can't do without it. We've also created a barrier removal task force, which you're allowed to say, this barrier, this bureaucratic barrier, this policy, this regulation that we have internally needs to be changed. Here's the upsides of changing it or removing it, or here's the downsides. And you get a 7-day appeal to the deputy, and if you don't win your appeal, that barrier is removed. So we're trying to implement systems where you have rapid change and rapid removal of barriers, rapid escalations. The idea is to move at pace. Start soon, show success, and keep at it.
Back here, sir. Sorry.
Hi, sir. Mike Stone from Reuters. I really want to commend you on how you've communicated about the Anthropic fight with all your speaking engagements and being on Twitter about it. So very good job communicating a very spicy situation.
It's butt coming, sir. I hear it.
And Anthropic is currently being used by a lot of people in the Pentagon. It's being used downrange. Can you talk to us about the pushback that you're getting internally from pulling Claude code out from people who have just adopted a way to get these workflows going? Can you talk about how it's being used in CENTCOM right now? And can you talk about your willingness to give waivers so that it can go past the 180 days?
Well, one of the problems, without getting into the specifics about Anthropic, is that we had one primary provider on classified networks. That doesn't work for the Department of War. It shouldn't work for any complex organization. We have to have other options. So when I set out to just start on this AI journey, we invited all 4 of the frontier model companies to come deploy with us so that our warfighters had different options. Some of these models are good at other things. Claude particularly has a good use case on coding. Codex with OpenAI is coming up strong. XAI has some real-time content sort of advantages. Google Gemini has some advantages because of their assets with YouTube, Nest Cams, so for robotics and things like that. So they all have different strengths, and the idea was to present all of them to the department. They may all converge in capability if you get this recursive learning sort of concept going in these models. But for now, we need to have more than one option, and ideally all options, and then maybe you narrate them over time. And I'm pretty confident. We've already deployed OpenAI in the last few weeks, and we're going to deploy the others. We have deployed Gemini. So as these things move up echelon into different classification networks, the warfighter is going to have tons of different options. And what we're seeing so far is the workflows are very similar. So the disruption is we think, minimal.
Mr. Secretary, starboard side back corner.
Hi, sir. It's Brandy Vincent from Defense Scoop. Thank you for doing this. Can you expand a little bit on what you're seeing with Lucas drones and Epic Fury? Approximately how many have been deployed, and against what targets are you using them?
Obviously, that's sort of information I can't discuss, but they've, we're not in full rate production, so we ship what we had, and we're able to get some shipments out there. And I think you've heard Admiral Cooper talk about the great success. Again, we haven't produced tens of thousands of these, so they're in the dozens, but they've worked very well so far, and it's proven out to be a useful tool in the arsenal, and I think you'll see more of them in the coming months and quarters.
Thank you. And then following up on Mike's questions, what is your direct response to users who are concerned that a sort of 6-month deadline to rip Claude out of their systems is not going to be long enough?
Well, it's my job to make sure it is, right? I'm in charge of, or responsible for, making sure the availability of other systems and other technologies exists. So I'm working every day at it with a highly capable team that's very tech savvy. We've hired people from the Tech Force initiative from OPM. We've hired a really great team from industry, and we're working with all the AI companies, and we're already planning, no matter what happened with that situation at Anthropic, to have other models available on the system.
Sir, thank you for coming. I've just got a quick question for you, and judging from your sort of industry experience. So I think I understand what you're trying to do, create amazing technology. The question I have is sort of the adoption model for the military departments, right? The way I'm looking at it is sort of a classic business disruption. And if you're looking at the military departments and you're seeing what they're doing in Iran right now, I think a lot of guys would say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just fund big traditional military, and you're going to be amazing. Number one. Number two is, typically what I've seen in the military departments is when you've got amazing technology, it's great, but it gets overcome by readiness issues that all the money is spent and there's no money left over to go buy this new amazing technology to go try it out. And so how do you see the military, compelling the military departments to adopt new amazing technology? Do you think you have to not only develop it though, so earmark it? I'm thinking about Replicator, for better words, that do you need to take money from Congress and earmark it specifically for disruptive tech to be a complement sort of the existing tech?
I think we have great partners in Congress and with the create. They helped us create DIU, the Office of Strategic Capital, which are directly at new entrants. I think the harder question is, how do we make sure they transition to the military departments quickly? And I think what I've seen in my time there is an incredible new willingness. And I was at the department in 2009, 2010 when we first had the Predator drone, and that was sort of earth-shattering at the time. Each military service has embraced a new level of what they'll accept as part of their arsenal. And I expect that only to increase because we're seeing the value of that all across. When you look at the Iran situation and the value of a counter-UAS system, that you're seeing the value and they're seeing the value. So I've had great partnerships with the heads of each military department, and they've asked for more, not less, of the new technology systems to blend in with their existing.
There's one over here, sir.
Hi, sir. So how do you balance the move fast and break things mentality of tech with the high stakes, risk averse nature of defense systems? You bring up the barrier removal workforce, but what do you say, assuming you say anything at all in your day-to-day, to ease the risk averse workforce to move faster?
I missed the second part of that question, sorry.
So, you bring up the barrier removal workforce, right? But what do you say to ease a risk-adverse workforce to move faster, like you experience in tech?
We have no choice. It's not that there's a choice to move slow or fast. The world doesn't accommodate that anymore. That was a Cold War, maybe post-Cold War era thinking. And I talked about the great power conflict we're in, and you look at sort of what's at stake, there is no option to move slower because our adversaries have just a different business model, so to speak. So it's not about moving fast and break things, it's moving fast to unblock things that otherwise would happen. Obviously, we take safety very seriously, we take risk with our country and our warfighters very seriously, but those aren't the things that are slowing things down. The safety methods. It's the paperwork, the lawyers, the lobbyists, the rules that were written 40 years ago that are not applicable now, the hoops required, all these things. And those are the things we're trying to remove, not sort of the essential readiness things and safety things that make these things more relevant today than they were years ago.
Mr. Secretary, starboard side again, directly into the lights. We're over here.
Hi, Marcus Weisgerber with the Wall Street Journal. I wanted to ask you more about the Lucas drones. You talked, I believe, about mass producing them. Kind of what are you thinking in terms of production goals there, and what are the challenges you have in doing that with the current way it currently is structured?
This was Lucas is a relatively new thing for us, so we haven't gone through the process of what the goal is, but we have a drone dominance program, which is primarily for smaller drones, and we have a program for at the Defense Autonomous Warfare Group for larger drones, and we have what we call the JIATA 401, a Joint Interagency Task Force for counter UAS. So we have three efforts that complement each other, so that we can both redomesticate our supply of these things and improve the technology and proliferate them. So you'll see different mix shifts depending on what AOR we're going to be in, depending on the threat environment. But the idea is to mass produce them in this country and have surge capacity so that when we need them, we know we can create more quickly without having to wait on a normal cycle that could take years. So that's the best answer I can give now.
Sorry about that. Sheila Kayalu from Jefferies. Emil, maybe how do you think about the increase in things like Gen AI, the 15 times usage, how that changes how the Department of War buys from the IT services contractors?
I'm sorry, you have to say that again.
How do you think increase of AI changes the way the Department of War buys from the IT services contractors?
I think that are you talking about sort of disruption of SaaS? Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. Defense Department IT systems are fairly complex. We have too many of them. They're custom built a long time ago, some of them in COBOL and all these other things. So the modernization effort is afoot. We have a new CIO, a great CIO, who was just sworn in about 2 months ago. When you talk about whether we're going to use agents to sort of abandon those things, it's hard to imagine that happening very quickly given the bespoke nature of so many of these systems. At the Department of War, we're not a corporation in that sense. We're using Workday or Salesforce or some of these other products en masse, and that's the threat you're facing. We're facing we have disaggregated data, old systems built in old technology, in old methodologies that the first step is to replace those with more modern ways of doing things and then take it from there. All right.
Mr. Secretary, Honorable Cadenazzi stressed the importance of critical minerals and materials across the industrial base. These investments focus on meeting the material demand of existing technologies. As you prioritize the six critical technology areas, how does your office consider the development of future systems which are currently constrained by the materials of the past? And have you considered materials innovation as a technology area?
Yes, I mean, the Office of Strategic Capital, I think someone asked, what they were up to these days. We've closed 5 critical minerals deals in the last 6 months. There'll be more coming so that we can ensure we have the full array of critical minerals either in our country or in allied countries. I do think we have projects that have spun out of DARPA that are using new methods, using biologics to do refinement of minerals. We'll have some quantum AI projects to think about what kind of new materials could be created synthetically or with other less rare metals so that we can create magnets in the way we want. Lots of different efforts, all out attack on this problem, and I think the technology is there to do a lot of these things to hopefully leapfrog where our adversaries are at, where they just mine and refine the same process that's been going on for decades. Hopefully, while we're doing the critical minerals deals to ensure our supply, we'll be innovating on the biologic side and the refinement side and all those, and the creation of new materials side so that we have a new way of doing it all together.
I think we have one last one, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Drew Lawrence with Defense Scoop. Is the military where it needs to be for counter-UAS during Operation Epic Fury? If not, how does it need to get there? And how are you adapting to the threat of Iranian drones in the area?
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, I think we have a lot of counter-UAS capability. So the question is not do we have sufficient counter-UAS capability? We absolutely do. The question is how do we make it cheaper and more proliferated, right? So that's why I mentioned that one of the critical technology areas that we've got is scaled directed energy, which is a way of using lasers to take out drones. So we have tons of other methods of doing it too. But it's to bring the cost down so that you're taking a $50,000 drone down with something that costs a few $1,000s, not the inverse ratio. So we have the firepower. It's just being able to do it in a way that's responsible from a financial standpoint.
Yes, sir. Sir, please join me in thanking Undersecretary
Thank you.
Michael.